So Eskom is switching off some of its power units on purpose, and not because the grid is failing, but because South Africa has more electricity than it needs right now. I mean, 2 years ago, that would have sounded absurd, and to some analysts, it still does. Now, the utility says that this move was deliberate. Eskom has parked over 13,500 megawatts of generating capacity. That's reportedly roughly the equivalent of 3 Medupi power stations, because holiday demand is low and the fleet is running well. I mean, unplanned breakdowns are reportedly halved compared to last year. Energy availability has climbed back up towards 70%, and Eskom has reportedly just stopped burning diesel at its emergency turbines entirely. And so as a result of this, the country hasn't seen load shedding in over 231 days. And on paper, at least, that's a remarkable turnaround. But in saying that, not everyone's buying the glow up just yet. Energy analyst Chris Yelland has raised an eyebrow at Eskom's end-of-year numbers, pointing to some unusual jumps right at the finish line, with energy availability climbing from 66% to 74% in a single week, and unplanned breakdowns just suddenly dropping off. Now, he hasn't accused Eskom of cooking the books, but he has reminded us that Eskom has a documented history of massaging the numbers under pressure. Eskom's chairman, though, did call the criticism irresponsible and says that the figures are both audited and independently checked. Now, it's important to remember that it's not just Eskom doing the heavy lifting. Rooftop solar, private generation, and backup power have surged, quietly reducing demand on the grid. Now, that's helped to calm things for now, but the real question is how the setup holds as the winter demand ramps up, because that's when the system is going to be under genuine pressure. So if that's the power sector sorted, at least on paper, the weather forecast is proving far less cooperative. Tornadoes aren't off the table this summer, and they're not theoretical either. 2 have already been recorded in Mpumalanga this year, a reminder that South Africa's storm season has come out swinging. But this isn't a tornado story, it's a pattern story. So according to the South African Weather Service, much of the country, especially the eastern half, is likely locked into an unsettled summer setup. The persistent heat, high moisture levels, and unstable air have become a deadly cocktail mix for frequent, intense thunderstorms. And so that's why the weather alerts are felt almost constant, and why conditions can flip from calm to disruptive within hours. So what forecasters are watching now is how long this pattern holds. Seasonal outlooks point to above normal temperatures continuing, which adds more energy to storm systems and makes extreme conditions like heavy rains, damaging winds, flooding, and even the occasional tornado more likely throughout the rest of the summer. Now, no, not every storm will be severe, but more of them will have the ingredients to be. Now, the result here is a summer that feels jumpy and uneven, long stretches of heat, sudden disruptions, and then quiet again. A season that's become far harder to plan around. And so while weather and power are visible pressures, some of the biggest decisions happen in structures that most people never see. Now, this sounds like a tax story, but it's actually about who gets the money and who doesn't. Now, most people switch off the moment they hear global minimum corporate tax. Fair enough. But this particular rule quietly decides where billions of rands end up and whether our local economy ever sees the money generated here. And so that's why this matters, even if you've never cared about tax before. So here's the idea in plain English. Stick with me. Big multinational companies like McDonald's operate in many countries, but they tend to shift their profits to low tax places. Think Cayman Islands, even if very little business happens there. And so this global minimum corporate tax was designed to stop that. It sets a 15% tax floor. And so if a company pays less than that somewhere, another country gets the right to collect the difference. And so the goal here was to make sure that corporate tax gets paid somewhere instead of nowhere. Now here's the pressure point. 145 countries have just reaffirmed that 15% minimum, but these contentious carve-outs have been added. And so as a result of this, richer economies are best placed to collect that extra tax, while developing countries carry the compliance burden and may see far less revenue. And so South Africa has signed on and has started implementing, But the question is whether we actually ever meaningfully collect anything, or if we've just legitimized a system that just benefits the biggest fish in the pond. And before we cruise on to our bagel bite of the day, here's a couple other headlines worth knowing. For starters, Trade and Industry Minister Parks Tau has eased competition rules so that struggling industries like steel and ferrochrome can legally work together on cheaper energy solutions, a move aimed at protecting jobs as electricity costs push firms towards closure. South African shares hit a new record this week, with the JSE lifted by a stronger rand, rising metal prices, and major rule changes that cut red tape and make it easier for companies to raise capital and stay listed. And the National Energy Regulator of South Africa has changed how the grid is allocated to independent power producers, moving away from this first-come access to this first-ready system that prioritizes projects that are actually financed, approved, and ready to build. And on to our bagel bite of the day. But before we get into that, just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying the show and you haven't liked and subscribed, please go ahead and do so. It helps a lot more than you think. And now, with that out the way, here is the question. What number does the Roman numeral XV represent? Is it A, 6, B, 15, or C, 150? We'll give you the answer at the end of the show. So here's a question. Why are these 5 animals the big 5 and not the hippo, the giraffe, or the crocodile? Well, the answer has nothing to do with size, beauty, or even conservation. The big 5 were named during the late 1800s by trophy hunters, and the rankings were brutally practical. These were the 5 animals most likely to kill you if you hunted them on foot with a single-shot rifle. Lions and leopards could ambush, elephants and rhinos could charge faster than you could reload, and buffalo were so aggressive that they earned the nicknames the Black Death and the Widowmaker. And so that's why this list feels off today. Hippos now kill more people annually, crocodiles were shot from boats, and giraffes are massive but passive. And so what changed is what we did with the name. As hunting faded and safaris took over, the term stuck but flipped. The Big Five is now a tourism checklist and a conservation badge, the exact opposite of what it meant. And so it's funny, a list designed to measure danger to hunters became a measure of whether your safari was worth the money. And as for that bagel bite, the answer is 15. X represents 10 and V represents 5. Roman numerals were designed for record keeping and inscriptions, but not calculations. And so without a symbol for 0, they were never able to properly function as a true mathematical system. And my friends, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe so you never miss the news that matters. And on that note, hope you guys have a great day further. Be kind to one another, and we'll catch you all tomorrow for the next round of the good stuff. God bless.